Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, this is the introductory session for Instrumentation and Measurement Lab. This is our first lab, and in this lab we will be discussing two things. Number one, introduction to the instrumentation and measurements, and number two will be the Wheatstone bridge and its application. So dear students, in instrumentation and measurements, we will be measuring any of the physical quantity or any physical variable of our interest. First of all, what is the physical quantity? You have studied in your earlier classes that physical quantities are mass, time, length, intensity of light, and the amount of substance, etc. These are the basic and fundamental physical quantities. Then there are other quantities which are derived from these fundamental and basic quantities, and those quantities are called derived quantities. The example of derived quantities are force, which is a product of mass and acceleration. Then another example is the pressure, the force per unit area, and similarly the speed, it is the distance covered in the unit time. So any of these physical quantities, whether fundamental or derived, we are going to measure these quantities in this subject, instrumentation and measurements. So any quantity, whether it is a physical, a chemical, or an electrical quantity, what we are measuring is known as the measurement. And the instrument which we use for measuring this physical quantity is known as the measuring instrument. As you are studying this subject in electronics engineering or in electrical engineering, so you have to construct, you have to develop, or you have to design an instrument which can display your results in the electronic form or in the digital form. So there is a diagram in front of you which is showing the complete process so that you can understand how this measurement process is completed and what are the different stages involved in the measurement process of the physical quantity. So you can see in the figure that on the left side there is a measurement. Measurement is what we are going to measure. It may be a mass, it may be a time, it may be a speed, anything, any physical quantity is measured. Then this what we are going to measure will be measured by any sensing element. So first stage of measuring is the primary sensing element. This primary sensing element will deliver its information forward. And if the information forwarded by the primary sensing element is not enough and it needs more conversions, and it needs more conditioning in it, and which can be suitable for further functioning, for better functioning in the instrument, it will be converted into the another form, and that another stage is known as variable conversion element. In the variable conversion element, in this stage, your data which you have taken from the primary sensing element will be converted in the more better form for the next stages of the instrument. And if the data you have taken, you have forwarded from the variable conversion element is even not enough and its level is still low for further functioning, then variable manipulation element will be the part of your next stage. In variable conversion element, you can say that you have, for an example, I am saying that the data we have obtained from the primary sensing element is in the form of analog data, you can convert this data in the digital form. That conversion from analog to digital will be in variable conversion element. And then if you are converting, if what you have taken, what you have obtained in this stage, variable conversion element has lower levels of energy, so you have to amplify it. So amplification will be that next process, and that will be included in the variable manipulation element. And after these three processes, the next process will be the data transmission. The data will be transmitted from one element to the another element, and finally the data will be converted in the presentable form, and on the data will be displayed on any screen, and the observer can directly see and watch the result of the measurement. And if you want to store the data, then you have to use another device for it, where this data can also be stored with its complete history. So this is a complete step-by-step process of the measurement. And all this what happens is done in the instrument. So instruments are basically, there are different types and different kinds of instruments, but here we are studying some of its kinds. There are active and passive elements. There are active and passive instruments. There are null and deflection type instruments. Then there are monitoring and control instruments. Then analog or digital instruments, and absolute or secondary instruments. And these depends upon if their working, their functionality, and their principles. Active and passive instruments, maybe they are taking energy from the outer source or not. So it will decide it is active or passive. It has self-powered or outer-powered. So this will be decided in active and passive instruments. Then null and deflection type. In null and deflection type instruments, its name tells us that there will be the deflection of needle, or there will be no deflection in these type of instruments. And if you are using instruments for monitoring any process, those instruments are called monitoring instruments. And if they are, along with monitoring, they are also used for control, then the instruments are called control instruments. Then instruments may be analog or digital. And the example of analog instrument is analog multimeter, in which you can measure the voltage on analog multimeter, where the position of needle will tell us the amount of voltage. And in digital instruments, you can see your results in the digital form, in the form of digits. Then there are other instruments known as absolute or secondary instruments. The absolute instruments are the standard instruments, and these are you can say that these are SI, System of International Units. These are SI instruments, and they are not calibrated. They are standard instruments, but the secondary instruments are those which are compared with the absolute instruments, and so that we can remove any type of error if these are present, if the error is present in the secondary instruments. But in the absolute instruments, these are specifically designed, and there will be no error in absolute instruments. They are oftenly placed in laboratories, the standard laboratories, in the national laboratories, and in the international laboratories, and in the testing laboratories specifically. So these are some kinds of instruments which I have told you. And if you are comparing secondary instruments with absolute instruments and making them error-free, this process is known as the calibration. This is very important. Calibration is a very important topic in instrumentation and measurement. You have to focus on this topic in your later labs, including this one. Then some of the instruments are indicating instruments. These instruments are showing the magnitude of any quantity. Then the instrument may be the recording instrument. If the instrument is storing data, then these are called recording instruments. Then integrating instruments, if the quantity is being integrated with the passage of time, with the passage of time the quantity is adding, and these types of instruments are called integrating instruments. So in this lab, you have to go through different instruments which are available in the lab. You have to visit lab, you have to open the drawers, you have to open the different instruments, you have to look on front of these instruments, on the back of these instruments, on the left or on the right side of the instruments, and you will see different symbols which are marked by the manufacturer on these instruments. And I will then tell you the purpose of these symbols. What is the purpose of this symbol? It may be any safety, it may be the symbol of any hazard, yes, it may be the symbol of inclination, that this instrument will properly perform at specific angle, and similarly there are other symbols which I will tell you later when you will see these symbols and ask me about these symbols. So you have to first take an instrument number 1 and note down its name and the symbols present on it, and you have to write its description in the description column. Then you will take the instrument number 2. Similarly, you will note down its symbols and write its descriptions in the column in front of it. So this will be your part of first lab. This is your lab number 1A. And now in the second, we will be discussing the Wheatstone bridge, which is also the first lab. I am recording another video.